My Sunshine by Rob Smit. Step 2. The Forging. March 1, 2035. International News Items. Non-compliance is not an option. Rebellion in Canada. Like an unexpected body check, the full might of the United States Army has rolled over former Canadian armed forces in the streets of metropolitan Toronto. But as thrilling as that city is, it's not the ultimate destination, but rather the nickel and iron ore mining belt of northern Ontario. Even as this is being written, the great United States Army has its hands full with the uncooperative sovereign governments of Canada. Picket lines of nationalistic Canadians have materialized all throughout the seized territory. March 15, 2035. International News Items. Steel exports at the point of a gun. The Trillionaire President of the United States is at it again. As international trade sanctions and trumped-up taxes bloom stratospherically, the message is clear. Give us your steel and precious metals before we come and take it. But for what purpose? The United States needed megatons of meltable steel material to build the Great Needle, but because of the secrecy surrounding the Forever Sun plan, reasons were never given when steel stockpiles from primary middle production states such as Ohio, Texas, and Pennsylvania were suddenly and inexplicably expropriated. Newly nationalized ore fields were depleted by mid-March, and offers went out from the U.S. federal government to buy up steel and component ore from other countries. But sensing desperation, the global community backed away from the steel-questing tendrils of the trillionaire president of the free world. He famously raged on his social media site, "Where's all that Chinese steel dumping when you need it?" And so annexation of steel through economic warfare in less subtle ways became the norm. And yet, by the start of April 2035, steel numbers for the needle came up short. An operation was devised, codenamed RIP, for Resource Intensive Production. The trillionaire president of the free world ordered his government-run mineral extraction department to extract ore from places they previously hadn't searched before, including a 30-mile stretch of ocean floor in the Atlantic, east of Charleston, in a region called the Bermuda Rise. Fearing the Garrett, deep-sea extraction teams hastily descended to the ocean bottom and laid claw and shovel into the pristine seabed, hauling away millions of years of sediment within days. The trench created by the RIP operation was so deep that it actually put a hole through the mantle. Mega-gallons of seawater began flooding into the Earth's molten core, producing an underwater steam jet the size of New York State, which flash-boiled the crew members working on the Digger submarines, as well as dozens of marine life species now driven to extinction. Later on, seismic study reports spoke of hollowed-out magma tubes and an overall weakening of the Atlantic undersea crust. Were any environmentalists still walking freely in the streets of the United States, they would have surely decried this catastrophe unfolding 20,000 leagues under the sea. But as it was, the only living witnesses to the fiasco were a few deep-sea angler fish holding tiny lamps aloft, solitary pinpoints of light in the abyssal dark. Meanwhile, as the trillionaire president of the free world had his RIP team furiously fracturing the undersea crust of the earth till it was as weak as a rotten tooth, and while work continued on excavating the tunnel at Winner, South Dakota, to such a depth and circumference that the bottom could no longer be sounded with ease, the second stage began. The forging. It started like this. June 1, 2035. Although the core members of Lost Bunch remained consistent over the weeks, the team of scientists, the ones who had to actually present facts and objections before the president, had changed several times. The latest science advisor, Shi Li, had lost a lot of weight, and his hair was falling out in clumps due to stress. Today, the reason for his body's self-destruction became obvious. He was a messenger bearing disappointing news, and he shivered visibly as he stood before the quorum and squeaked out, "We will have a problem forming the needle, your magnificence." Why? The trillionaire president was already irked. his Garrett team twitching with anticipation.
There is no furnace on Earth large enough to heat the lengths of metal needed for this needle. 1 mile wide radius by 50 miles long? There's nowhere on Earth where we can forge metal to this dimension.
Well, you see, you already messed up. The president grinned crocodilianly. You're not thinking big enough.
Big enough?
Stuttered Lee. You said on Earth. What about off Earth? Lee goggled, like he had just been told water was dry. The Lost Bunch members found his confusion amazingly funny. Go to the sun! Go to the sun! Screeched the fingerless one. The president nodded sagely, confirming that this also had somehow been his idea. At a crucial distance from the sun, gigatons of iron ore could be smelted under incredible temperatures using solar technology into a length of steel. It was an interesting coincidence that the solar body that started this whole epic would also be the key to its manufacturing of a solution to the president's problem.
But how can we temper the steel in space?
You can deal with the temper of the steel, Mr. Lee, or you can deal with my temper, the president warned basso profundo. Lee gulped nervously. July 1, 2035. International news items. SpaceX super launch. In a tremendous display of patriotism and technological chutzpah, SpaceX has launched over 121 shuttles in the past 18 days. The nature of the flights remains classified, but the White House has suggested it is all in preparation for nationwide Independence Day celebrations. Because it was science, and science was boring to the president, you wouldn't think any of this would be very notable. But newspaper dweebs and the lying scum media came sniffing around, and soon throngs of people stood at the base of the SpaceX top-secret Nevada launch zone trying to comprehend what they were seeing. How many gazillions, yes, the governmental budget is now calculated in gazillions, of dollars were being squandered on a mysterious monument, no doubt the largest white elephant in the history of elephants, in order to appease the mysterious whims of the president. Eyes watering, the taxed masses looked on in horror as the production process of Forever Sun was moved off-world. Throughout the months of April and May 2035, SpaceX was brought onto the project. After much signing of lucrative government contracts, the month of June was spent filling the cargo holds of SpaceX interplanetary lift rockets with tons of iron ore, each one holding more weight than a shuttle was ever imagined to lift during the designing of its limits. Through the month of July, dangerously overloaded spaceships jutted into the stratosphere with an infrequent failure rate, and once they had reached a certain height, they marshaled at a staging area which spun in orbit above the Earth. Here, they performed a record-breaking ballet of space cargo transfers using machinery specially designed to operate in zero gravity. To spaceship work crews circling about in the cold black of space, this super-secretive phase of activity was known as the Summer of the Smelter. All summer long, the payload of raw ore was transferred into Smelter 1, a massive blast furnace shaped like a trough but with the size and length of a battleship. Unbeknownst to the American public, it had been assembled in space beyond their view, hidden on the dark side of the moon, and was kept aloft in orbit by SpaceX tugboats shuttles. Once the long metal trough of Smelter 1 brimmed with ore, it was lidded and shut inside a vast iron cooking casket. Colossal fastening rings were tightened by nuclear-powered robotic torquing arms. Vast gaskets were pressed into place, and ultra-heat-resistant sealing compounds were squeezed into the tiniest niches. This sealing process took a matter of days, and then colossal screens of ceramic beads were wrapped around the outer shell of Smelter 1. The engines of the smelter fired to spin the unit in 360-degree rotations, so it would drape itself in miles and miles of glittering heat-resistant length. For a bemused cosmic observer, the process might resemble the drama of a snared whale, whose thrashing and rolling only entraps it deeper in a trawler's net. Once locked inside the ceramic shroud, Smelter 1 was towed by a fleet of fire-resistant SpaceX shuttles towards its primary destination, the heat source for the smelting, the Sun.